Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session for Monday, October 4th, 2021, 10:05 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. Commissioner Carolina Mejia is on our Zoom and will be in the boardroom shortly. Commissioner Edwards is not present at the moment. He may be joining us through Zoom later this morning. County Manager Miro Chavez to my left and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell to my right. Public can follow along through the live stream on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We have, on the agenda, we have a week's scheduled budget presentations. This morning is a session lasting until 11:45. The topic is overview and forecast update. We will adjourn and pick up at 1:30 with budget presentations from the Treasurer's Office and Auditor's Office. With that set up, go straight to our Assistant County Manager or Robin Campbell.
All right, straight to me. Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning. So this, as you said, launches 2 weeks of budget presentations by offices and departments. As part of the budget process, the board will hear from each elected official and appointed director about the budget that they have submitted and their requests. As we go through the week, you'll learn about what the office and department's challenges are and how they have proposed to address those challenges through their budget. This morning we'll do a bit of an overview. So you've got a foundation. The morning is probably going to be pretty short because we've done a lot of this work already in the last few weeks, and a lot of the information that I prepared for today we've already given to you. So you've already got a lot of the pieces of the puzzle. So just in overview, last week, it was a little longer ago, but we updated, no, it was just last week, we updated the forecast, and I distributed an updated forecast. There were a lot of questions about sales tax, so I'd like to spend this morning taking a look at a sales tax analysis and then answering any questions that you may have about the forecast. And then talk about the process for when you hear about the policy level requests from the offices and departments.
Well, the worksheet is dated September 27th.
And that is the most recent one. I did not update this again because I don't have any really new information.
Just for the board members to track on the report that
Right.
September 27th.
September 27th is the most recent.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I'm holding multiple because I have notes on other versions, but
Nope, that's
I've also got my September 27th.
great. Good morning, Commissioner.
So you're carrying your budget book.
Yeah, what a fun weekend, huh? So we're gonna start out, Commissioner, with sales tax analysis because we got quite a few questions about the sales tax forecast.
Okay.
And that is the forecast that was part of the one that we gave you last week on September 27th. So what you see here, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so share. I have to do a few things so that. Okay. And what you see on the top graph is a graph that you've seen many, many times. The top graph is the nominal amount of sales tax that we've received every month going back to January of 2006. And what you see here is in 2006, sales tax coming in pretty strong. There's a definite pattern. slightly went down in 2010. So you don't see growth, and if there were a line drawn, it wouldn't be going up. It's staying pretty flat, going down ever so slightly through the recession. But what you see is that even in the recession, 2009, 10, and 11, we were collecting pretty much what we collected in the past. It was down a little, but not significantly. In 2012, the pattern changes a little bit because at that time, Department of Revenue changed from quarterly reporting for a lot of sales tax payers. They made it much easier to pay online, so quite a few quarterly reporters went to monthly. So we bounced around with a weird pattern for a little while. And then in 2015, we started a growth pattern that went pretty much unabated until the pandemic hit. And even then, we're on an upward trajectory. And the bottom graph is, again, one that you've seen and a little more telling. It's the one that economists tend to gravitate to, and that is year-over-year change, which basically means that in any given month, we compare it to that month from a year ago and see what the growth rate is. And what you see in this graph, and we've looked at it many times, is in 2006, going into 2007, the county had a growth rate of roughly averaging about 10% per month. We hit the Great Recession, which had negative growth year over year, started to see recovery in early 2011, had still some negative impact from the recession in 12, and then growth rate anywhere from 5 to 10% on average per month through the next few years. And more often we started hitting months with 10% growth, which I would tell you is pretty robust for Thurston County. Then you see this negative here in May of 2020. That is the pandemic. Everything was closed down. It dropped the way we expected, but in a very unexpected pattern, it popped right back up. So this is your classic V-shaped recession, all packed into like 4 months. Drop down, pop back up. And everywhere has seen this, everywhere across the state, all the jurisdictions, pretty much all the jurisdictions. A few don't look quite like this, but the vast majority do. This is what we saw across the nation, and not unusual across the world in first world countries. So then you come into 2021. And there are these couple of months with extraordinarily high growth. Well, that's not to be unexpected, because that's April and May, where we're comparing to last year where we had negative growth. We expected those months to be extraordinarily high. What we didn't expect was the rest of the months to be extraordinarily high. And we are continuing to see extraordinary growth. I broke that down a little bit on page 2. Here are a few graphs that I've not shared before. The top graph here is compares the 3 lines. The bottom line in blue is the amount of money that we collected in 2020 by month. The green dotted line was the forecast for this year, which at the end of the year is not any more than what we collected at the end of 2020. That was unexpected. And then the solid green line is collections to date. And you can see that collections to date is significantly higher than last year and significantly higher than the forecast. And what you see in this box to the side is I've listed precisely year-to-date through September. In 2020, we collected $14.8 million. In 2021, at this point in time, we had forecasted $15.4 million. And what we have actually collected to date is just over $18 million. So to date, sales tax in the general fund is 18% above forecast and 22% above 2020 collections. Now, we showed you, or part of the conversation we had last week was about, is this the effect of point of sale? And we really don't think it is, because the cities have seen the same pattern. It's not like the cities are going down and the county has gone up. Everybody is going up. And what we think is happening is, and this is what I hear in the webcasts that I've listened to with economists from, again, across the country, is the stimulus payments last year last year and this year, pent up demand. There was the extra money in unemployment, and I know that has been discontinued at this point, but that was available at the time we're looking at. And unemployment is very low. It's a job seekers market, certainly not an employer's market when it comes to filling positions, but we are close to what is considered full employment. So for all these reasons, you see a very robust economy right now. Even though there are certain sectors that are still suffering from the effects of the pandemic, overall, the economy is quite robust. So all of this has led me to the sales tax prediction for the next couple of years. And this bottom chart is going back to 1992, and it is the year-over-year change all the way back to 92. And what you see again is pretty robust growth. Here's the recession in the early 90s. I think that might have been, the dot-coms were here in the early 2000s, the dot-com bust. I don't remember what the early 90s were offhand, but it was a recession then. Here's the Great Recession in 2010, 2009. And here is this growth that we've just been talking about, anywhere from 5 to 10% per year, close to 10% in the last 4 years. 2021, even with the recession, had this year, I'm predicting 15 to 16% growth. And you see, I don't think that we're going to continue at that 22%. It's going to soften a little by the end of the year, but I do think we will easily hit 24.5 million in collections this year. We are on track to do that, even if the last 4 months of collections drop down. And then what I'm predicting for the next 2 years, next year, I think it'll drop down to 10%, but we're driven by retail and construction. Construction is not slowing down, not at all. It is picking up. And we're doing certain things in land use policy. We're closer to having the habitat conservation plan approved. The permit center is working at speeding up their processes. So we're doing things that are encouraging construction in the unincorporated area. And part of these collections are from construction in the incorporated areas, None of this is slowing down. The retail is not slowing down. So unless something goes very, very wrong, it is not going to be, we're going to hit 10% growth next year. And then I have dropped 2023 back to 5% because that represents a conservative average growth rate over the last 20 years. But 5% is
But it
becoming
hasn't been-
conservative.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this, I like conservative projections too in general, but I mean, it hasn't been under 5% since the Great Recession.
That's right.
As soon as we pulled out of it in 2012, it's been over 5%, and the last since 2017, it's been 10.
Right. So for all these reasons, I'm confident that the sales tax projections in this forecast are extremely reasonable, if not very conservative. Have any questions about the sales tax?
I mean, the understanding like what types of economic activities create flow into the county, you know, versus somewhere else is not 100% clear. I mean, but if you look because I would have theorized that, you know, okay, well, maybe, you know, maybe when people travel out of the, maybe travel is like a net loss to us, right? Like more people from Thurston County go all over the world than people come flowing in here.
Right.
And therefore, people aren't doing that because of COVID. And so they're taking those dollars and translating them into direct retail purchases on Amazon or locally or whatever. That would be a logical theory, but it doesn't really fit. I mean, these trends are predate COVID. I mean, so it really doesn't, I mean,
Right.
if it drops down to 10%, that's still like historically great growth, although it's not, it's pretty much, it's what we were seeing pre-COVID.
That's right. And if you look at the sales tax report that we looked at back in August, that's in your binder.
Which tab are you under?
Yeah, this is under
Number 4.
tab 1, the forecast and reference materials.
Yeah.
And it's document number 4.
Okay.
This report talks a little bit about where the money comes from. And I would say that it only goes back to 2019, but I could add quite a few years to this and the pattern wouldn't change. Our money comes from retail and construction. Those are the two biggest ones. And then in the top 10 payers, you drop way down, what is called way under construction, to the point to see any pattern at all, we have to separate out industries 2 through 10, so you could see what they're doing and get some clarification from those. So the hospitality industry is on here. It's pretty low. So accommodation and food service, those sales come in like 7th or 8th. It's not the big drop revenue stream for us. It's important. It brings a lot of money into the county. But the big drivers in our sales tax receipts are retail and construction. And they have been for as many years as I can see back.
Okay.
And they don't seem to be abating.
it is a growing county. I mean, and we have seen that, and as we grow as a county, and we move into more of an urban county category a few years ago, continue to grow. And the HCP is going to provide even yet another availability of land that we haven't had for the property owners and developers to utilize that option. So the conservative approach that you have seen is really is conservative to a 5% growth. As you stated, we have not seen the 5% growth in the last, you go back even, if you take aside the recession back to 2007 maybe. So, and that's what I'm saying, and going through the conservative approach is probably the best way that you can probably go through the budget process and allocating whatever you think is appropriate. And that's what is presented to you last week, and that continues to be the September 27th. It is a conservative, but as Robin has stated many times, is a forecast, and things will change.
Yes.
And still, here in the next few days, we'll get another update on the sales tax, and that will also change.
This includes the September payment, so we're not going to see a new one until the end of October.
So,
Yep.
And it looks like it grew again.
Yes.
it's
Relative,
going up.
with the climbing
Yep.
trend.
Yeah, it hasn't slowed down. It's again, quite surprising. We hit the pandemic last year, and the governor was closing down businesses, and things were being closed down across the nation and the world. Every economist, and I absolutely thought it made perfect sense, said we're about to fall off a cliff. Well, we did, but there was a bouncy net at the bottom. We bounced right back up, and that's the thing that has surprised everybody. Everybody has been amazed by the bounce back. And no one is predicting that it's going to slow down anytime soon.
There's a little bit of a concern in terms of at the national level, the inflation. Even the inflation, some of the reports that I've seen from economists, they tend to have more of a temporary effect, no long-term, because of the supply chain. Eventually that will stabilize and will create a little more predictable inflation. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the country, across the world. It is difficult to get a point at which say this is what I feel comfortable with. Everything is evolving.
Interest rates have been so low for so long, I keep waiting to, see that they're gonna, okay, there's a plan to tick up, and it really is not, there isn't.
There isn't. Because
Even with inflation fears, they still kind of think they can manage it with the current, approach. So that's been really surprising to me.
Yeah.
The child of the late 70s and 80s.
I
As we've
think I
all talked about,
mentioned, my first home, I was paying 12% interest.
Yeah, mine too. 12,
Yeah.
13, almost 13%. And it was a good percentage.
Yeah, I was happy to get that 12%. And I look at that now and think, how could anyone have afforded that? Of course, homes cost a lot less then too, but it's pretty amazing. All right, so there's sales tax, and again, there had been some questions about that last week, so I wanted to go into it in a little more depth. The rest of the forecast has not changed in this point because I have no new information from last week. I have these numbers represent what you would find if you ran reports out of the budget system. We'll get an update for this year. I should have updated financial plans from offices and departments for their 1 year, just to say, here's what I think I'll spend this year. I will have that by the end of October, so I'll be able to update this year by the end of the month before you make decisions. Financial plans will be provided, as you'll see in your binder. Each office and department was asked to submit their financial plans. So when they review their budget review, they will also review the 10-year plan for any fund that their office administers. So we'll have all of those for you. And really, I don't have much more for this morning unless there's anything in particular that you would like to discuss. When the offices and departments come, though, I am going to ask you to do something that I've asked in the past. Let's see if I can pull this up. Each office and department will be going through their list of policy level requests one by one and making their best business case to you. And today and all through these next 2 weeks, we will ask you to not make any decisions and not make any commitments to the offices and departments. And they know that this is not the time when you're going to decide. So don't go, oh my gosh, yes, we're absolutely going to do that, because you don't know what else is going to happen. But I am going to ask you to rank the proposals high, medium, or low. High meaning that in your first assessment and reaction, you feel like this is something that we really need to do. Medium meaning, I hope that we have capacity to do this. I can see how important it is. And low meaning, I know this is important, but we just may not be able to afford it. In no case is anything you're going to be looking at not important. Please do not take what I'm saying or how I'm suggesting you're ranking these things to be that anything that you will see is not important. Every office and department has done a hard work of trying to determine what they really need. So everything they bring you is important to them. But you've got the difficult job of sorting through what can we actually afford. So these are first impression, high, medium, low. I'll collect those from you at the end of each session. And then when we go into deliberation 3 weeks from now, I will have all of the policy level requests for the general fund sorted where if it got 3 highs, those things are going to rise to the top. And going down to where 3 lows will be at the bottom. So you'll have an initial sort. You are absolutely not locked into your first impression. You can change your mind. Someone else might persuade you to change your mind. You can go, wow, we just don't have enough money for even all of the very high things. So don't feel locked in by these first impressions. Just all right, on first blush, here's how I'm thinking about this. All right? And you'll have a little cheat sheet to fill out that I'll give you.
Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
For me, like just first impressions, I guess it'd be good, but I like to see, well, how is that first impression affecting the budget? Is that what at the end of the 3 weeks, what we're gonna see?
Exactly. Yeah.
She'll kind of mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember you, Robin can basically go, okay, well, if you just funded the things that you all agreed were high, here's what the forecast would look like and all the projection and
Robin
the
will
graph.
have this up on the screen live.
And that'll help you.
And the decisions, perhaps preliminary decisions the board is having will plug in so you have a sense as to what that is doing to the overall forecast. So, and that's what we have done.
But you're collecting them, and one thing that maybe you're kind of getting at is you're collecting them day by day. So by the second half, something that may seem really important in the first day, you're kind of like, oh, that's actually not as important as all this other stuff I've heard about. So that's why it has to be kind of
Right, that's why I'm saying.
just
you'll
preliminary and
absolutely be able
tentative.
to change your mind later.
I mean,
And
luckily,
be
I really like when I asked for that thing related to kind of considering the atrium, and I mean, I kind of have, we didn't get that last year, that just kind of like,
Right.
here they all are, and so that you can kind of look at the grand 30,000 foot, here's what you're likely to be asked for,
Right,
just going in, so I have at least some sense. I think last year it was just kind of like, we just took them one by one, and I really didn't know what was coming, because some
Right.
people were late with their reports.
that's right.
I read the ones that were in, but some of them were in, and some people, like I said, some people really did a great job of putting a lot of meat into those reports, and some just, it seemed like it was pro forma,
Right,
so it was a grab bag of stuff. I was thinking we have a little extra time, I mean, and
we do.
Commissioner Mejia, if you've heard this, then we'll just say no, but if you haven't heard it, it might be useful for her to hear kind of the history of how the board has done budget, like the process, like in the last, whatever it is, 5-10 years. You know how you did, at one point you tried to get the groups to work together on the bucketing and all of
I've
that.
tried a few things.
Is that priority base, yeah?
If
Sure,
she hasn't
I
heard that, I
can,
think it's useful.
Okay, so when I came to the county in 2010. At that time, one of the first things I instituted was the change requests that you see, so that each office and department had a formal way of asking for each line item. I also put in place the process that we're about to go through in the next 2 weeks, the presentations. So every office and department got a chance to come in and say what was most important to them. So those were the first couple of things that happened that were possibly different than before I arrived. Then we hit some hard years and we did a few things. Now the law requires that offices and departments be given an opportunity to say what they need. So they still completed all the budget change requests, we did all the analysis, but to get to a final budget, the board 1 year did budget cuts. There were cuts 1 year, and offices and departments were asked to prioritize what they would cut. That was a difficult year. And then there was a year where we just did a freeze. And what we meant by a freeze was you got maintenance level budget. And that was it. Nothing went up or down. If there were policy things you needed to do, you had to find a way to absorb them because we didn't have enough money. That was, I think, in 2014. So coming into 2015, the board had a little more money, as you can see in the forecast. So they authorized a few more things. And then coming into 2016, we tried a priorities of government type of process where we grouped the offices and departments into the areas of government, if you will. So a law and justice group, the general government group. The board at that time felt it would be unfair for commissioners to sit on any group, so we created what is called the legislative group that consists just of the commissioners and your funds. And there was an economic vitality group. So each of these groups were asked to work together. Once they developed their own ask, each office and department saying what they need as they are able to do under the law, They have that right. And then to come together and work together in a peer review type fashion to create the priorities for the government area. And the thought is that if you have a strategic goal for, say, economic vitality, that group would work together to achieve those strategic goals and prioritize the asks accordingly. So there's a public health team.
And wasn't, just to interrupt real quick, because this is what Ramiro and I were just talking about, why it came up back into my head. Wasn't there also in that, at least one of those years, like well, here's how much money we have, and here's kind of how much of the budget your team, so they kind of got like
Absolutely,
they got like a percentage
spend.
number to work with.
That's what, the same year, and I remember it was, today, in this forecast, you have available 2.5 million. That time it was 1.5.
Right.
Right.
And based on the budget size, it was allocated in buckets for the
That's right.
priority teams. And at that point, I think the law and justice received close to 1.2.
76%
Yeah.
probably. Because the board chose to, there are a ton of ways that you can slice and dice the amount that you're going to spend. But at the time, the board, I think, decided that however the pie was currently split, about 70-some% for law and justice, that's the amount that went to the law and justice group of the 1.5 billion. So law and justice got the vast majority of it, and then the rest of it was split to these other groups. And it came with some instructions and things that they could do, but that was their task. Well, the law and justice team did not wish to play, if you will. The directions from the board at that time were, you can give us your priorities, or you won't receive any policy level funding. And they did not. So to the law and justice, they did not allocate additional policy level monies. That money remained on the table. And in I think it was 2017 when, is that the year Gary and Hutch took office?
Right.
So when the board, the commissioners Romero and Wolf retired, Commissioners Edwards and Hutchings were elected and joined Commissioner Blake on the board. That board, one of the first things they did was to allocate the law and justice money.
On the first quarter budget amendment.
Yeah, in the First Amendment, they allocated the money, even though those groups did not participate as requested. We tried again in 2018. They wanted, the board asked me to go ahead and let's try this again. And one of the main requests from the Law and Justice Group was that we split out the courts. So we did. We made the courts their own group, Superior, Juvenile, and district, all in a group. We didn't totally split it up. And then the remaining law and justice. Well, that went better. The courts came in with a request. Law and justice, sort of, not really, but kind of went okay.
I know prosecutor and public defense at least will work together, because I
Yes.
happened to be here watching them the day that they were doing their presentation.
Yeah, we still had one or two players who didn't appreciate the process, let's say. But it went better. It was extremely successful in general government. It worked pretty well for health and economic vitality. That year, the courts went really well. And the law and justice wasn't terrible, but it wasn't as good as it may have been, all right? So that was also the year that we put our new strategic plan in place. And by the way, that is one other thing that I will have for you later today is a copy of the strategic plan, because you should keep that in mind as you allocate funds. But it was still a priority process and nicely aligned with the strategic plan. I would have proposed to the board in 2020 that we do this again, because it gets better. You know, people don't like new things. Yes, change is hard. So I would have gone down that path again. But in 2020, we were facing bigger problems. So we were, we were worried about how much money we were going to have. No one could forecast at that time with any certainty. People were worried about the effects of the pandemic. They didn't want to do the biennial process. So for a number of reasons, I abandoned the priority part of the process and just went back to the having each office and department come in and do their thing. And I didn't bring it up again this year because it was hard enough going back to a biennial process and standing this up again. As you look forward into 2023, you should consider, you'll have a new budget manager. I'm still working on hiring a new budget manager. So you should really consider going back to a priority process, trying again to bring the groups together. And then I know that Commissioner Mentzer, you're looking into a citizen group that would review and make recommendations to you on the budget. I think that is a brilliant idea. We need time to stand it up and staff to help them out, but I think that's great.
I was thinking, the reason this came up with Ramiro and I's discussions, because I was thinking about managing what we've got this year, and I wasn't thinking about the bringing the groups together part. I was just thinking group by group, kind of like, well, if the board had $3 million to spend, or $2 million, let's just say $2.5 million, we agreed, then, that's so much less than, the total aggregate of everybody's requests. I was kind of like, well, okay, you're the auditor. The auditor gets 8% of the general fund. So you get so if, not that we would do it that rigidly, but just in terms of a conversation, I was thinking, well, I might like to ask the auditor, if that is what we did, theoretically, you got 8% of this new pot of money, so to speak, and that's X number of dollars, how would you spend those dollars?
Right.
And Ramiro was kind of saying, well, that's kind of what we did, like back,
We did a little bit of that.
in a way, he was just reminding me that exercise had kind of been played out, because I mean, that's,
Right.
it's just a way for me to, it's just a question for me to get from the, like, what is your top priority? I mean, we're not funding $13.5 million worth of stuff, so.
Right. And as far as that goes, I have not been here a year yet, or at the state in 30-some years of preparing budgets. I've never seen a year where the policy asks were proportionate to the amount of money to spend. It's always like a 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
You can afford about 80% of what comes in.
80%?
No,
20%.
20%,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, that sounds pretty good.
80% is unfunded.
And speaking on the same conversation, you have the forecast $2.5 million, each year in the next biennium, 13 million. That sounds, tasking, which is going to be tasking, but it's not unusual.
Right.
And in the past, in some instances, it was a freeze, no additional expenditures. In some years, 900,000. And that year, the priority base was 1.5, but never has been.
It sounds like this is more money, honestly, that we've.
Never has been, at least from my experience, never has been to this level of additional expenditures.
Right.
Because the base budget also increases. If you see the increase on the base budget, also increases along the way to cover all the increases in cost. So it's a twofold what you see on the forecast. It's not like, you know, in the total expenditures that you have on the budgets in here, it remains flat. It doesn't. I mean, it increases along.
We need more money just to keep everybody where they are.
And that's what you see in the forecast keeps increasing because the cost of doing business continues to increase. And that is outside of the potential additional revenues you may consider funding. I mean, additional requests you may consider funding.
Right. So yeah, it's never easy because there will never be as much money as everybody wants. But the other thing about budgets is, and I know I've talked to the board just a little bit about this, there's a question about what is fair. And some people might think fair is for if you've got 8% of the budget, now you get 8% of new funding. Some people might think of that as fair. But in best practices in budgeting, what is fair is giving everybody an equal opportunity to say what they need, and then aligning a budget with your strategic priorities and a long-term vision. So fair might not be a fair share per se, but fair is that everybody gets an opportunity to ask for the money that's available. And you've created that. One way to do that is to minimize the types of things that are considered in an amendment. So that's how we go about that. One-offs, if you consider the it's all good principle, everything you hear in the next 2 weeks are going to be good things that people want to do, that someone especially wants, that there's some citizen group out there that really wants everything that you hear. It's all good. But you can't fund it all. You have to hear about it all and then make those choices. Other things, it's a short morning because we've done a lot of this work already.
I have scheduled a cafe planning session for October 14th. I have 2 items for you to discuss. One will be going to have Deborah Mandia come and start having a perspective how we'll be developing the legislative agenda for next year. But the second item is the Citizens Advisory Group for the budget, just to begin the conversations. Nothing to do. I asked Amy to send out an email to all the clerks in the state to see what counties are using it. We have evidence that some may already have. So just to give you a perspective, initial conversation, and certainly that is the direction we'll start working in next year. But
Robin, you had identified a couple of places outside the state that you thought worked well, so I'd like to kind of hear a thumbnail of that as well.
yeah,
Okay,
we'll really just to begin the conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously, at that point, I will not ask the board to say A or nay. I think it's worth to continue the conversation.
Is there still interest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when the Board of Health conversation came up?
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
Right.
Clearly, there was a majority of the board was not interested.
But there are, again, GFOA has best practices on how to engage citizens, so I can bring information on that as well.
Yeah. So it just begin the conversation, I think.
Yep, great.
Okay, and then Friday is right here. Okay. And these guys are, like, have you given them like 45 minutes, or is each, like, when there's 3 offices doing an afternoon, do they each get an hour of our time, or how does it, what did you?
45 minutes, I have built-in breaks.
45 minutes? plus
Yep,
breaks, okay.
15 minutes between each session.
It's page 15, is that updated, the page 15?
No, I will get the most current copy
I'm
for
just looking
you.
off this agenda for the
Oh.
week.
Yeah,
You
Giving me
should
Friday.
have
I had sent out
September
the,
30th date is the one that's the latest.
Yeah. So I'll make sure there's a copy for you, Commissioner. Yeah, because people had to move around. The assessor's not here today. The courts at the end of the week also asked to be moved out. I do try to keep the presentations in groups still, so you hear all of the law and justice stuff kind of in a block, all of the general government, but it's not hanging together quite as well as it often does. So we'll start with the easy stuff, general government. On Wednesday, we'll move into your programs and funds and internal service funds in the morning, and then commissioner budget and funds in the afternoon. Then on Thursday and Friday, law and justice. Then next week, we turn to economic vitality. That includes CPED and public works on Monday, public health all day on Wednesday, and then the miscellaneous on Friday.
Okay, so we're good to go then?
Yep.
All right, this work session is adjourned and we're back at 1:30 with the treasurer's office.
Right.
Can we leave our stuff here?
Yes.
Where'd you get that?